Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar, Legislative Roundup and Session Highlights. Please introduce yourself in the chat and share one thing you want to learn as we get ready to get started in just a couple of minutes. Again, welcome and thank you for joining our webinar today, Legislative Roundup and Session Highlights. Please introduce yourself in the chat and share one thing you would like to learn from today's webinar as we get ready to start here in just a minute. Okay, I think we have most people in the room.
I see a bunch of familiar people. Hi, everybody. Lots of familiar names.
Yes, so, okay, we are going to get started. Good morning and good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar, Legislative Roundup and Session Highlights. I am Jason Stuber, Senior Strategy Manager for Compassion and Choices, the nation's oldest and largest nonprofit dedicated to improving care, expanding options, and empowering everyone to chart their end-of-life journey. Before I introduce today's speakers and panelists, there are a few housekeeping items that I would like to share. If you need live captioning in either English or Spanish, please enable it at the bottom of your screen by clicking the double C's and following the prompts. There will be a brief 10-minute Q&A at the end of the conversation, so please pre-populate your questions in the Q&A function located at the bottom of your screen, and we will get to as many of those questions as possible. There's no need to raise your hand, as we will only take questions during that period from the Q&A function. And lastly, this webinar is being recorded and will be sent out post the webinar if you would like to view it again and share it with those in your network and community. Before introducing our moderator and panelists this morning, I would like to acknowledge the celebration of the Rosh Hashanah High Holiday, which began sundown yesterday, October 2nd, and concludes sundown tomorrow, October 4th. And again, this webinar is being recorded for those who cannot attend today. This webinar will be moderated by our very own Chief Strategy and Marketing Officer, Mickey McIntyre, and joined by our esteemed group of panelists. Elizabeth Armijo, National Director of Advocacy, was supposed to be one of our panelists today, but unfortunately is unable to attend due to the effects of Hurricane Helene. Our other panelists today will be Donna Smith, Diversity and Inclusion Advisory and State Director, Angela Schultz, State Advocacy Director, and Melissa Stacy, Regional Advocacy Director. At this time, I would like to turn it over to our moderator, Mickey. Over to you, Mickey.
Thank you, Jason, so very much. I appreciate you getting us organized today, and I want to thank everybody for being here. I also want to say, as a person who lives in Florida, I have had my fair share of hurricanes in my life, and my heart goes out to, as everyone at CNC, we are all thinking about sending support to the folks who were struggling now with lives turned around as a result of the current hurricane situation that is affecting about a third of our country right now. So we are going to be recording this so that people can watch it in their own time, and we hope that they are doing well to the best of their abilities, and we hope that they will be able to move forward in the coming days as successfully as possible. Today, I'm super excited to be with this team. I'm sad that Elizabeth isn't with us, but she's lives right outside of Asheville. So if you've been watching TV, you know why she is not with us today. But I'm super excited about Angela, Melissa, and Donna, three core members of our team who work on the ground with volunteers, with our leaders, with legislators, trying to move medical aid and dying across this country and having some insider discussions with folks. We're going to talk about some of the states that had some of the biggest kind of news and activity. Please know that we're not going to be able to address every state where we have engaged in this year. And also that if you're in a state that we don't talk about or that may not be kind of high on our list of the places where bills were introduced, and you're interested in advancing medical aid and dying, we do want you to get in contact with us, and we can tell you what to do to make your state ready to hopefully become part of the fight for medical aid and dying authorization. As you all know, our goal at Compassionate Choices is to make medical aid and dying available, easily accessible to at least 50% of the population within the next decade. And more importantly, we're trying really hard, and we'll hear about some of the efforts in Virginia today, for example, to get an authorized state without a residency requirement in every region so that folks have the ability to access it within their region, at least, if not in their own state. With that, I'm actually going to move to our panel and ask them to give us some updates and insights on what's happened to advance this goal this year. And I think we're going to get started with Angela. Hi, Angela.
Hi, everybody.
Hey.
Thanks so much, Mickey. So this year we successfully helped advance medical aid and dying legislation in 19 states. And those states introduced 35 medical aid and dying bills, which is 4 more states than the previous year. We also had 2 authorized states, so states that already had access to medical aid and dying, introduce improvement bills, which I'll talk about in just a moment. We also had 428 bipartisan medical aid and dying bill sponsors and co-sponsors nationwide. In the previous year, we had 358, so that was tremendous growth.
That's amazing. I feel like it was only yesterday where we had just like a handful of people working, in legislatures in different states. And now it's this remarkable number and bipartisan support. The 19 states, Angela, can you just quickly, it's like naming all 50 states in the union from memory. Can you do the 19 states where there was activity this year?
Yes. So Arizona, I saw some people in Arizona in the chat. That's also where I live. Florida, Delaware, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, New Hampshire, New York, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Tennessee, Wisconsin, and Virginia.
Okay, now I had the list in front of me and you memorized it perfectly. Good job. Even in the order that I have it listed, and I have no idea. I guess that's alphabetical.
Alphabetical, yeah.
There were 2 states that you didn't mention where I think there was work that happened, right?
Yes. So in New Jersey and Colorado, we had improvement bills, and I saw Vanessa in the chat. She's one of our amazing volunteers in Colorado. And I used to oversee Colorado up until like 2 years ago, so I can really speak to how great those volunteers are. And what they did when I was overseeing Colorado is they were really, really motivated to improve their Colorado End of Life Option Act. And wanted to make improvements because they were just seeing how difficult it was for some of the residents that were terminally ill to access medical aid and dying. So our volunteers actually really stepped up and took the lead and met with legislators to educate them on the need for improvements and gain support. So with their advocacy, last year we worked with Senator Janelle and Representative Brown to pass a bill. And on June 5th, Governor Jared Polis signed the Improved End of Life Options Act into law. So this bill went into effect on August 7th. And the improvements included that it reduced the mandatory minimum waiting period from 15 days down to 7 days. And then if somebody is not expected to survive that 7-day waiting period, the bill allows for that 7-day waiting period to be waived. The bill also included advanced practice registered nurses who have it within their scope of practice to prescribe can now serve as attending and consulting providers, which is really, really important in states like Colorado that have a lot of rural area that might not have access to a lot of physicians. So, and then in New Jersey, there is also an improvement bill, but there hasn't been any movement yet. So they're still in session. They just returned from their recess. And so in this upcoming fall, we're hoping to see some movement on the bill. And we have submitted recommendation and language to the bill sponsor and looking to reduce some of the waiting times, but we're still waiting for the bill language on that.
Great. Thanks, Angela, very much for those two updates. Congratulations, Colorado.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks to all of the volunteers, supporters, and donors who made Colorado possible and our active campaign team there. And New Jersey, your day will come again. Also, we did some litigation work in New Jersey, which, as a little tease, I'll encourage you to attend our upcoming legal roundup, where they'll talk a little bit about what happened there. Now, I feel like we were all so hoping, Angela, we were all so hoping that Delaware would happen. And I feel like we have one man to blame. Can you tell us the story of Delaware, or is that Melissa? Where are we going with this? Where am I going to?
I'm going to do it, and we do have one man to blame. So in Delaware, we've worked for 10 years to raise awareness about the option of medical aid in dying, and we built a really, really strong network of supporters across the state. So we worked alongside Representative Bombach, who did retire this year, but he has provided steadfast leadership on the medical aid in dying bill in Delaware. And he has been a relentless advocate for many terminally ill Delawareans and supporters. So this year we conducted robust advocacy campaigns to a wide range of audiences. We streamlined engagement between supporters and lawmakers by setting up meetings. We conducted patch-through phone calls. We did statewide advocacy alerts and emails, text campaigns, and we did rallies and hosted lobby days. We hosted press conferences, and more importantly, we lifted up stories of our advocates through the media. We also hired an expert lobbyist and media relations firm, and they ran advertisements and television on radio to help bring awareness to this urgently needed legislation. We sent postcards and developed social media campaigns, and we pitched and obtained editorial endorsements from the largest newspaper in Delaware. We secured 17 sponsors and co-sponsors this session, the most the bill has ever had since being introduced. And all of the sponsors and co-sponsors included the members of the Democratic leadership. The Ron Silverio and Heather Block End of Life Option Act passed the General Assembly on June 25th, and it was ready to be sent to the governor's desk for a decision. And so this is where it starts getting bad. So Governor John Carney, he terms out of office for governor. And so he decided to run for mayor of his town of Wilmington. And the primary election for mayor was going to be on September 10th. And so quickly after June, after a week or so went by, we suspected that he wouldn't take any action on this bill until after his primary. So during this time, we just kept waiting, and we drove over 1,200 emails and hundreds of calls to his office each week leading up to the decision. We also did polling in Wilmington. So he was running for mayor of Wilmington. So we targeted Wilmington, and the polling showed that residents overwhelmingly supported medical aid in dying. So we did a concentrated campaign effort in Wilmington to have residents contact him and advocate for their support of the bill. So as we suspected, 3 months later, after his primary election, outgoing Governor John Carney finally called the bill to make a decision. And unfortunately, he vetoed the bill on September 20th. In his veto, he said, "Although I understand not everyone shares my views, I am fundamentally and morally opposed to the state law enabling someone, even under tragic circumstances, to take their own life." So it is tragic. Governor Carney disregarded the Delaware legislators' lead, our terminally ill advocates' wishes, and the will of nearly 75% of Delaware voters, acting on the opinion of one voter, himself. Moving forward, though, we are not giving up. So we have already asked the current gubernatorial candidates where they stand on the issue. and Matt Mayer, who's running for governor, has publicly announced his support. We met with lawmakers last week about the reintroduction for next session, and we have already secured a new bill sponsor for the House, Eric Morrison. So
Great. Thank you so much, Angela. I mean, I really appreciate that. And I just have to go. My heart goes out for the folks in Delaware and for our team in Delaware who worked so hard through this process. It was an amazing Herculean effort in a relatively small state, but still organizing small state, big state, they're all hard to do. And we will get them next time, especially if we can get Matt Mayer in the gubernatorial seat and making sure that Eric is still there for us in the future. Donna, how you doing, Donna? You're on mute.
I know. I'm doing well, Mickey. Thank you so much.
I know you're going to talk with us about Maryland, which is your campaign state, but I think you're also, Corinne is working right now with the legislature and all, but are you going to tell us about New York first?
Yes, I'm gonna start off with New York.
Okay.
Good day, everyone. So glad to be here and thank you all for joining us. Let's talk about New York. New York is unlike many other states in that power to move legislation is in the hands of the legislative leaders. There is no procedural way that individual lawmakers, even though as powerful as our bill sponsors are, one of whom is the chair of the Assembly Health Committee, and the other is the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, can force a vote even in their own committee. It is up to the Assembly Speaker, Carl Hessel, and the Senate Majority Leader, Andrea Stewart Cousins. All of our efforts last year persuaded the Assembly Speaker to do his own vote count, and 2 days before the session ended, he confirmed that we had more than enough votes to pass the bill, and that he would add his vote as well. This was a huge development, but he was only willing to put lawmakers in his chamber on the line to take a vote if the Senate agreed to move the bill as well. Unfortunately, by the time we secured his commitment, it was too late to do a solid vote count in the Senate. But the real problem was that the Senate Majority Leader is uncomfortable with the bill, and she wouldn't have let it move even if we could demonstrate that we had the votes. We got the press to ask the Senate Majority Leader what she needs to see in order to move the bill, and she is now on record as saying that the topic requires more discussion. So our team summer creating opportunities for discussion across the state, and particularly in her district, which is Senate District 35, Yonkers and Westchester, and will continue to do so this fall. We did a mailing to her voters and top donors urging them to talk to her. We have partnered with allied organizations like the League of Women Voters, the NYS Council of Churches, and Planned Parenthood to hold a forum right after the election, and we're inviting her to participate. We have created the conditions for her to become willing to move the bill in 2025. If she refuses to do so, we will be able to point to what she said and what we've done and show that she is literally the only person in the New York Senate unwilling to engage in the discussion she says she needs.
Thanks, Donna. I want to add in here, like, I mean, there was some there was some really amazing work done by our New York team in trying to make this happen, including, you know, civil disobedience within the chamber, some of which ended up in arrests and people spending a little bit of time having to deal with being arrested in the state. Tactics that we have not used in New York before, including micro-targeting in our lobbying efforts and advertising efforts, the ability to try and maintain a constant kind of beat of a drum on that Senate Majority Leader within her district itself. And it's fascinating that, you know, one person can, again, we see this story of one person really holding up the potential for success in a state where a plurality of voters really want this, this bill. So we're going to continue to invest in New York as much as we possibly can, and in new kinds of lobbying and discussion tactics and advertising and marketing in order to try and get a shift in the majority leader's position. Donna, how about Maryland?
Well, to follow up on that theme of one person holding everything up, it was the same in Maryland.
Definitely the year of one person this year.
Yes, yes. And I see one of my volunteers on, and Dr. Seth Morgan can attest to that because he's a wonderful volunteer. Team Maryland was hopeful for passage at the beginning of the session with support from the governor and Senate President Bill Ferguson. The governor is Governor Wes Moore. Despite the hard work of our sponsors, advocates, and staff, the bill failed to move forward due to one legislator changing her support on the bill toward the end of the session. Our team mobilized hundreds of supporters to reach out to their legislators. Now, reaching out could mean phone calls, it could mean letter writing, but we also employed patch through calling service to deliver over 1,400 calls to the last 3 legislators that were on our target list. In addition to that, we had a wonderful lobby day where our supporters met with 78 offices in the Senate and in the House on that lobby day to garner support for the bill. I'm sorry.
What about the next session? How are you feeling about that in January?
Well, I happened to meet with the Senate president over the summer at one of the conferences he attends, and I got him in a corner and good conversation. And then I talked to his chief of staff, who promised us the bill would pass this term. This term is inclusive of this year and next year, so we will see. But there's a lot of movement in Maryland. We're very excited about it. We work hard to continue to engage with legislators and lawmakers who are somewhat still on the fence.
So Donna, you had such a successful media strategy with so many stories, the 40 stories in 3 months. What was really resonating for people in the media to pick up this story?
Well, as in other states, we have been working hard in Maryland for over 10 years. And I think what really resonated with people, we have 2 dynamic terminally ill storytellers. And I think they captured the hearts and minds and the spirit of this movement in a way that maybe had not been done in a while. And they were very active and they were very upfront in talking to the leadership about what was going on in their lives. And I think that helped to generate all the publicity and the media around it. And it really helped us gain momentum.
Thanks, Donna, for that update. And so the next session is early next year, starting in January, going through April. You guys are going to keep working really hard, all your volunteers. Dr. Seth's still on board. We're going to keep going there in Maryland, right?
Yes. Our session is January 8th through April 7th.
Okay. Now, so we've heard it takes storytellers, it takes volunteers on phones, it takes volunteers on lobby days, it takes organizers, folks emailing, folks showing up to meetings in farmers markets and health fairs and all of that stuff to do education, people in the media. What's going on with all those folks in Illinois, Angela? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
There we go. So thanks, Mickey. So we've also been working really, really hard in Illinois, and I saw a couple of people in chat from Illinois. So if you want to get involved, please reach out to us because we are going strong in Illinois. So what we've been focused on in Illinois for the past several years is really building capacity and awareness about medical aid in dying. So doing lots of outreach in the community and educating people on what medical aid in dying is and what it isn't. And we have some incredible supporters who have worked on this issue in Illinois for decades. On February 9th, the End of Life Options for Terminally Ill Patients Act, SB 3499, was introduced in the Illinois General Assembly by Assistant Senate Majority Leader Linda Holmes. So this is the first time legislation of its kind has been introduced since 1997. So in partnership with ACLU of Illinois, we created a coalition called the Illinois End of Life Options Coalition to lead the campaign for Senate Bill 3499. And we have had a strong volunteer presence, as Mickey said, and Donna mentioned, hundreds and hundreds of volunteers engaging in our work across the state. So the bill was not heard during this regular session, but we continue to work with our sponsors to ensure that the bill receives a hearing as soon as possible. And we have also worked to get the majority of support in both the House and the Senate, and we are very well positioned for a hearing and vote on this bill. We just continue right now. We're working on increasing education about the bill. We had lots of news stories around it. You might have seen a couple months ago across the state. We've been doing digital campaigns, and we continue our grassroots and grass tops outreach. And then we also have done polling in Illinois, and in general, we've done polling in very specific parts of Illinois, but then also polling statewide shows that 3 in 4 voters in Illinois support this bill.
Thank you, Angela. I just want to point out here, so again, these different tactics that we use, we're getting more and more sophisticated about how we deploy them. This is the second time now you're hearing about polling that was done in a specific geographic location or with a specific population or type of voter in order to really be able to get to legislators and show them what people want and what they think and where they're going and how they can do the right thing and still have the support of the voters in the end. So with that, let's
Mickey,
go to—
can I make one more comment real fast? Because I saw
please.
Bella said firsthand storytelling is the best way of making lawmakers see real issues. And I just wanted to highlight, if you saw Take Me Out Feast First, the second episode is on a gentleman named Andrew Flack, who died from cancer in California, and he used medical aid in dying. And his mom lives in Illinois. And she initially, when he was diagnosed with cancer, she wanted him to move back to Illinois. And he didn't want to because he wanted the option of medical aid in dying. So she shares her story with lawmakers, and she shares it publicly. And it really is amazing. Our storytellers are wonderful and are great advocates for this. So.
Right. They also are amazing at sometimes being plaintiffs for our legal cases as well. So if you have a story to tell or you want to become involved, please go to the storyteller page on our website and fill it out and let us know, because they truly do make it all happen. It really is amazing, whether it's in the media or direct to a legislator. I just want to ask a quick question about Illinois, Angela. The ACLU, I believe, is pretty helpful in Illinois. Yes? No? Or do I have that
Yes,
wrong?
they are working. We're in partnership with them on this bill.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. And then the second thing, before you go on to Minnesota, since I'm out of alphabetical order, there was a question about Nevada in the chat. And I just want to say Nevada's legislature meets every 2 years, and this is their off year. So continued organizing and outreach and activities are happening in Nevada, but there's not really a legislative update at this time. How about Minnesota, Angela?
Yeah, so in Minnesota, the bill also, this was exciting. It moved further than it ever has, and it passed through 4 committees in the House. So this is the first time in 10 years that a vote has ever been taken. And there was also an effort to amend our bill to include a residency restriction. So in the bill, we don't have a residency restriction, but there was an effort to by a legislator to include a residency restriction, and that was defeated by the House Health Committee. And Mickey, do you want to talk about the residency restriction real fast, or?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it at the top, but the primary reason why we try to reduce the residency restriction is because we do not believe that people, the state border should determine the health care that people have. And other than medical aid in dying, there are almost no other health care that is regulated by a state border. We see that now with abortion in some cases, but The ultimate idea around our reduction of the residency requirements is so that if somebody lives in a neighboring state and they're on the border, they should be able to get medical aid in dying where they get their health care. And if they're getting their health care from a state next door that has authorization, and that's where they're already getting their health care, they should be able to get the full range of health care that's offered in that state, even though they may not live in that state. But ultimately, this is about trying to provide access for as many people as we can across the country through authorized states as close to their home as possible. So that's what we're really trying to have happen with the reduction in the residency requirements. Right now, it is Vermont and Oregon are the two authorized states that do not have residency requirements. And reminder that Montana has a very specific legal construction for their medical aid in dying authorization. And so residency has never been specifically addressed there. Okay.
Thanks, Mickey. Just wanted to explain to people why that was important. So, but back to Minnesota. So unfortunately, the Senate did not schedule a hearing before the deadline, before the session was over. So in Minnesota, there are two senators who are the holdup. So if you're from Minnesota, you know it is the DFL, the Democratic Farm Labor. If you're not, like myself, I just want to explain that's the Democratic Party. It's called the DFL. So they hold a 3-vote majority in the House of Reps. So the outcome of the November election will determine whether the Democratic trifecta holds on for 2 more years. So oppositional DFL senators, so the two that were stopping it, are not up for re-election until 2026. And they are also in strong DFL districts. So the next session does start January 4th, and we are planning on reintroducing a bill.
I also want to add in Minnesota, for all of the folks here are on this chat from Minnesota, that the Minneapolis, the folks who are some of the leadership donors to the campaign in Minnesota and to Compassion and Choices host an annual event, and that is coming up later in October. So you should try to get to that event. We have a very strong contingent of donors in Minnesota, and we want to support their activities as well. So we're going to go now to 3 more states where there's a bunch of activity. Thank you, Angela, for all your updates. Take a breath. And we'll go to Melissa, who hasn't had a lot to say yet. One of the states where we've spent, I think, the longest, perhaps one of the longest period of times working is Massachusetts. What's going on?
Oh, I can catch up on not saying anything for a while here, Mickey. Let me share with you about Massachusetts. So we had not the results that we wanted this year in Massachusetts. We had an incredibly robust campaign. Massachusetts runs a 2-year legislative session, so it's been 18 months since it started. And we gained a lot of momentum this year, which was really exciting. We saw the bill come out of one of the joint committees on public health favorably, the fastest it's ever moved out of that committee, which is huge. We saw the bill come out of a joint committee on healthcare financing for the first time ever in the history, and we've been working in Mass since 2008. Trying to move this legislation forward. And so it's been really great to see that movement to Ways and Means. We have more bill sponsors than we have ever before. And it's been really interesting to hear the conversations in the building, particularly towards the end of formal session. We had the last week of session, we had a media event. We had mobile billboards outside the State House that displayed patient stories and encouraged legislators to move the bill before the end of session. And then our advocates came in, and I know we have at least a couple of Mass advocates on the call. Barbara was one of them that came in and helped distribute patient and caregiver story booklets to all of the legislative offices. And hearing the feedback from the offices as volunteers were going in and talking and sharing what their stories, everyone on the Hill was talking about it. I was hearing from our legislative champions, oh my gosh, the billboard's amazing. These storybooks are incredible. We knew that for the first time ever, all of the offices were having an incredible conversation. And so that was really great to see this year. And really carried the momentum into hopefully next year, where the Senate hopefully will move the bill through. We do know that in Mass, one of the sticking points is the Catholic Church. There's a lot of influence within the building among the Catholic Church, although we know Massachusetts Catholics support this by about 77%. And so we're going to do some work there. But we've been very bolstered by the movement and momentum we've seen this past year in Mass.
I'm so sad. I just wish around Massachusetts. I so wish Betsy Van Dorn, one of our strongest supporters. I think every year, I think Betsy will do it. We'll do it. And it's so, it's frustrating. Melissa, now a state where we saw so much happen, come to fruition, almost there. Virginia, you want to talk about the South? Okay.
Virginia was amazing, and I have to give a huge shout out to our incredible volunteer corps on the ground in Virginia that are doing presentations weekly to various groups. Virginia was incredible this year. We worked very closely with Senator Hashmi and Delegate Hope on filing the legislation this year, and saw historic movement from all of the activity. Briefly, we moved the bill through 6 subcommittees and committees for the first time ever. These are all firsts. So a bill had never moved out of a committee in Virginia favorably. It actually went to the Senate floor, where there was debate and discussion, and passed through the Senate and was docketed in the House. The House bill moved through various committees, but it did go to the House, but they didn't do a vote and discussion, because strategically they knew they didn't have the votes on the floor, and they would rather wait until we have the votes to pass it until taking that vote on the floor. And so that was, tough, but it was really hard to be sad given all of the incredible movement and the historic momentum that took place this year. Particularly, Congresswoman Jennifer Wexton stepped in and shared her personal story about why she wants medical aid in dying, and reached out to her colleagues in the State House. We had an awesome week of action. Sarah, our campaign organizer, and myself went to Virginia for the week and had over 100 meetings between us and our advocate team on the ground in the building that one week, talking with legislators about the issue. There was a media event. It really was an incredible accomplishment, particularly when you look at Virginia's session, and it's about 2 months last year. This next session will be about a month. And so it was really incredible to see the amazing movement that took place down there.
Yeah. So we didn't have to test the governor on this, but thank goodness, I think, but Virginia is a term limited governorship, if I recall correctly, right?
It is. You're absolutely right. So we did not test the governor based on his stance on other issues. We're kind of figuring he would not be supportive. He is up termed out at the end of 2025. Virginia's in the off election, so their House of Delegates, as well as the governor, will be reelected next year.
Yeah. In the House, do you think it was a matter of not having enough time to get the vote count and get the House ready to take a vote? Do we actually feel like we probably would have the votes, or is it a matter that we have to see the election and, hopefully get some different folks in the decision-making chairs?
I think the latter, it really plays into it more. It's a really close seat count, both sides, and there was a lot of questions about the bill and some concerns. There's a lot of misinformation about this topic that's out there. And so we are this fall and into next year continuing to meet with House members to address those concerns, share what actually is in the bill. But I think that it's more, we need to also see what happens with the elections next year, and hopefully gain some new supporters and get them on board early.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. I got to be mindful of time here. I got to move us along. New Hampshire. Lots of action.
Also, lots of incredible firsts in New Hampshire. A bill was filed. It was the second year of session, and so the bill was filed at the beginning of the second year. It came out of committee for the first time ever with a recommendation of ought to pass. In New Hampshire, if a bill's moving and it comes out of a committee, it goes to the body for a vote regardless. It did go to the House. And there was a little bit of drama because it passed by a very small margin, and then somebody asked for a recount, and so we had to wait a couple of weeks until it was redocketed, and then the recount failed. Basically, they wanted to overturn the original vote. So officially it passed in New Hampshire by a 179 to 176 vote, so super tight margins. We really saw, as we all talk about, this is a bipartisan issue, and we had 36 Republicans in New Hampshire that voted in favor of the legislation, and it was really awesome to see that movement. Their support came from the core values of freedom and self-determination that are very much at the core of New Hampshire and who New Hampshire is. And the Libertarian Caucus came out the day before of the vote and endorsed the bill as well, which I think really played into that, what we were hearing. The bill did go to Senate committee, but it received an ought not to pass vote, so it did go to the full Senate and was voted ought not to pass. Really did some incredible work there. I know Seth Morgan is on the call. He came up from Maryland to testify. We have amazing partners on the ground in the New Hampshire Alliance for End of Life Options. They really lead the effort. We provide support and in-person testimony. Charmaine flew in to testify live as a subject matter expert. And so really excited about the momentum and possibilities in New Hampshire.
The momentum is amazing. I hope that we're able to do the work with the Senate to really increase the House margin and then get that Senate going would be amazing. I just have to compliment Dr. Seth Morgan for the hat trick, the triple play of the shout out on this call. Clearly doing your part volunteering. Thank you very much. Angela, you've had time to rest. We're going to talk about the terrible, awful, horrible day that happened in 3 states.
Yeah, so sorry that you all have to see so much of me today. I did see lots of people here from New Mexico. I saw Adrian in there. Elizabeth was supposed to be helping, and so I'll be sure to tell Elizabeth that you all said hi. I saw somebody else talk about how amazing Elizabeth was in chat. And then I also saw a question about New Jersey. So New Jersey does have medical aid in dying. What I mentioned earlier, it's just an improvement bill working to reduce the waiting periods. But however, this year there were 3 states that also had opposing bills, and New Jersey was one of them. So New Jersey tried to repeal the medical aid in dying law, and that had no movement. And then there was also a bill in Washington that was going to try to repeal a few of the current provisions, but this also had no movement before session ended. And then I saw Molly in there from Ohio End of Life Options. Hi, Molly, asking about West Virginia, and don't worry, it's on our list. So in West Virginia, there's 2 ways you can get a ballot measure sometimes. So you can do it when a legislature passes a ballot initiative, or a resolution becomes a ballot initiative. And sometimes you have citizen led ballot initiatives. I didn't realize until I started working here that not all states have citizen led ballot initiatives. And so West Virginia is one of those states. So the only way to get a ballot measure on the ballot is for the state legislature to refer a resolution to it, which is what they did in West Virginia. So this past spring, the legislature passed a resolution to put a ballot measure to amend their state constitution, stating that no person or healthcare provider could participate in medical aid in dying. And so now citizens in West Virginia will vote on this ballot initiative in this upcoming November election. So it's important to know that there was already a law in West Virginia that was prohibiting medical aid in dying. And this amendment, it's called Amendment 1. If it passes, it will become the first state to prohibit medical aid in dying in their state constitution. So this makes it nearly impossible to reverse, because if it passes, you would have to get the state legislature to pass another resolution for another ballot measure that citizens would vote on again, to overturn that. So of course, we're also concerned in keeping our eyes out too, because if this passes, it could also lead to other states trying to change their state constitutions to prohibit medical aid in dying.
Thanks, Angela. It's really a difficult situation in West Virginia. I will tell you, like, if you know people who are voting in West Virginia, please encourage them to vote against the amendment. I will tell you, we did polling there. We did some exploratory work to try and determine whether we would be able to counter the campaign. The amendment is written really badly. It's not easy to counter the way it is written. There's so little infrastructure on the ground in West Virginia for us to work with and work through to try and get on the ground fast and be able to try and take on the initiative. I will say it did look like from the polling that a majority of West Virginians would be against the amendment. We're hoping that they vote the right way. It will be difficult because the language is not clear. It's a little confusing. But if you know people in West Virginia, please encourage them to vote no on Amendment 1. I will also just add a little bit here before we go to questions. I want to first thank Angela, Donna, and Melissa for providing such a great roundup for the 2024 legislative sessions in the states that had a good amount of movement in those states. Thank you for sharing all of that. I want to add one thing about Virginia, and then I'm going to talk about something else. So not Virginia, I'm sorry, Florida. So you all know I live in Florida. I'm worried about Florida. I'm excited about Florida. And I've been running around the state of Florida similar to the way I ran around the state of California before we passed medical aid in dying there. And like California, for us to really engage in moving medical aid in dying in California, in Florida, we really have to build up our base of support. And Nicole and Daisy on our staff are doing that through education and outreach efforts throughout the state of Florida. In particular, we have to build our base of support with Republican voters in the state of Florida. And so they've really been moving some of their efforts towards doing that. We have seen in New Hampshire and Montana that and we have seen in polling that Republicans support medical aid in dying. What we have to do is get the right messaging and get the right number of people to be able to influence our legislature here in the state, or be able to achieve 60% in a ballot initiative, which some of you in Florida are familiar is happening right now in the state in this election process around other issues like abortion and other issues that are fundamental to individual autonomy. So part of that, in order for that to work, we're going to have to engage in heavy research like we did in California to find out what the exact messages are for the people of Florida that will be able to get them to move their legislators and give their legislators the information, knowledge, and fortitude to be able to vote the right way when a bill comes forward. So right now, organize your friends, get with Daisy and with Nicole to get them in your community doing some speaking and outreach events. Let's increase the number of folks that we have there so we can support the research that's necessary and hopefully be able to, even though a bill was introduced there, really be able to put together a full-throttled campaign to ensure that we can get passage in Florida. It's going to take a little bit of time. Having said that, I want, and before we go to the Q&A, I want to let all of you all know that today voters in 44 states will going to go to the polls on November 5th to choose something like 580, 800, almost nearly 6,000 state legislators. And voters in 41 states will decide 150 ballot measures. So all of these, whether they're you know, these state legislators are so important in being able to advance our work. And so whether you're working in a state that you heard about today, whether you are living in a state and want medical aid in dying, get to know your state legislative candidates, figure out which ones would support medical aid in dying, and help them be able to win in, voting's actually already happening in many states, this November. Try and get them into office, let them know that you support this issue and it's why you want them in office. We are now CCAN, the Compassion Choices Action Network is a vehicle by which you can engage in the electoral process. You can become a member of CCAN, and through that membership, you can then engage in our Power Compassion platform, which has both PACs and individual legislators that you can support to try and help achieve medical aid in dying in your state. That's up and running right now. We also have a national PAC, which we use in many states across the country. So if you don't see your state specifically listed in Power Compassion, then talk to us about our national PAC, and that might be a way for you to let legislators know and candidates know that your support means support for medical aid in dying, and hold them accountable. With that, we have about 10 minutes left. I'm wondering, Jason, do you have some questions for us?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Great.
And you sound fabulous.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nikki, and esteemed panel. So yeah, we do have a few questions. One question is, can you speak to what Project 2025 might mean for all of these great efforts discussed today?
Yeah, so I guess I'll take that, but I welcome the panel's opinions as well. But I will tell you right now, our policy team has just completed the Project 2025 analysis and what it will mean for autonomy issues, but in particular medical aid in dying. And it's not good. It is not a good outline for us. It would most likely cause increased opposition to medical aid in dying. If successful in its implementation across the country, it would further galvanize, in particular, Republican legislators from moving into the column of affirming medical aid in dying, and I might add, could jeopardize other already existing authorized states for medical aid in dying, and I was just sitting with a very prominent attorney and writer in South Florida. I mean, there is some potential for it to really be jeopardizing some of the existing, already approved, used end-of-life options beyond medical aid in dying. So there is some real concern about what Project 2025 will do around end-of-life care and options. And I will add, coupled with the current court system, which again, please come to our legal roundup, would also causes us pause around some of the already existing end-of-life options beyond medical aid and dying. So be sure to tune in on that. Okay. Also, I will add from a legislative perspective, and we'll be talking about this in the federal legislative policy update. We do now, for the first time, have an amendment. We've introduced along with a House of Representatives member whose name is escaping me at the moment.
Brittany Patterson.
Thank you, Angela, from California, right?
Colorado.
Well, see, there you go. Great things happen in Colorado. Introduced the amendment that we worked on with her and her team pretty extensively to amend the Assisted Suicide Funding Restriction Act to carve out the authorized states from that. So from a federal perspective, that could certainly help out with some of the potentially in the future around some of the veteran populations as well. Next question.
Yeah, so next question is around Colorado. So the question is Colorado Improvement Bill question. Is it still required to have two doctors sign off in Colorado? Did the Colorado law also include PAs as providers along with nurse practitioners?
Thanks, Jason. So it can be a physician, a doctor, or an APRN now in Colorado, but it's still two of them. As for the PA, and I forget what the other profession an NP was it? So it's just APRNs, and that really gets into kind of the different medical societies and who they are willing to also let practice this in each state. So that's why it kind of varies state by state. So in Colorado, it's just APRNs and physicians.
Great, thank you. Um,
Just want to actually respond to something that Bella wrote in the chat. Yes, Bella, I think it increases the likelihood that Project 2025 could be more difficult if President Trump does get reelected. But make no mistake about it, the Supreme Court right now and a good deal of folks who are involved in Project 2025 will continue to do the work of trying to create the world of Project 2025 regardless. So I don't think yes, it'll be a different environment if Trump becomes if former President Trump gets elected in this election. But there are, the court in particular is not going to be friendly as we continue to move forward.
Yeah, so Mickey, that's a great follow-up because that was the next question that I was going to ask. Is do you think the made effort will be affected by the recent Supreme Court decision to overthrow Roe versus Wade? Is there any additional commentary?
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, I think Justice Thomas, in his opinion, basically opened up the door for the reconsideration of other bodily autonomy issues, this is what happens when I have my moments now. Equal protection cases from past and laws that have been passed. So I think there are implications for it. It is one of the reasons why we have so stridently defended the California bill in federal court when it has been this last time when it was a case in United Spinal. That was a federal court case. Luckily, the judge has dismissed the case on very favorable grounds to us, but there's likely appeal. And it is the kind of case that could move to the Supreme Court, that could call the question and potentially undo, medical aid in dying in the Ninth Circuit or in California or in the Ninth Circuit or potentially across the country. So yes, there is, and Neil Gorsuch actually wrote a book about how to undo medical aid in dying authorizations. So it is not a favorable court for us.
And Mickey, just to confirm, I think you know this, probably just misspoke, but they did appeal already to the ninth. It's pending.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Angela.
Okay, so I think we have time for one more question. And the question is, sorry. Oh, is there any way to pass national legislation to work with those in favor of healthcare being between a doctor and patient, particularly abortion and end-of-life care?
Yeah, that's a strategy that we've been looking at. And I'll tell you what, it's ultimately a great ballot initiative strategy. So if we could look at kind of moving, trying to create a way for all bodily autonomy or autonomy issues to kind of come together, whether that's LGBTQ plus transgender healthcare rights, whether it's women's reproductive freedom and abortion, along with medical aid and dying, and there's a couple of other places. I will say, you know, with Roe versus with the Dobbs decision, I think we had thought there might be an opportunity at that point to do it. What's really happened with that is the strong desire to get as many abortion ballot initiatives in states where ballots can happen and where they'd be successful. So it gave less opportunity to actually think on that kind of future-facing strategy where we would be able to kind of look at the range of healthcare decisions and autonomy issues and kind of come to a collective strategy around those. But my hope is that in the next generation of our leadership, and as we continue to grow and be larger as a movement, as an organization, and as an issue that influences people's decisions about who they vote for and what they vote on, we'll be able to see increased collaboration across those three communities in particular, as well as some that you might not normally think about, like organ donation and transfer and things like that. So there's a lot of opportunity in that stead, and hopefully we'll be able to kind of move that forward in the future. So with that, I want to say we're at the hour. Y'all are amazing, our tremendous panelists. Thank you all so much. Our hearts go out to Elizabeth, taking care of her and her family, as well as others in the Southeast and Midwest, and to our folks with Rosh Hashanah. We're sorry again, but we've recorded it for you. Thank you all, our supporters, and you on the phone, our many volunteers and supporters who actually made this work happen. And we know you plugged in today. Thanks for all your efforts. Stay tuned. Come back for federal policy. Come back for legal, and bring your questions. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.